Greetings and salutations, everybody. It's XLJtheOG from Cole TV, and welcome back to Back in the Day. Now, here on Back in the Day, we like to take a look at the rich history of World Championship Wrestling, by taking a look at some of the great rivalries, matchups, and so much more. And as always, we like to kick it off with our top story of the week. And this week's top story, we're going all the way back to 1991. To be more specific, July 1st, 1991. And the story we're talking about is Ric Flair being stripped of the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, as it's been well documented, at the time, Ric Flair had some serious beef with the head of WCW, Jim Herd. Jim Herd had envisioned Ric Flair's character to go in a completely different approach. We say Spartacus? Ugh. But anyways, Ric Flair flat out refusing to do this, thank God. And thus Ric Flair would just ultimately end up leaving World Championship Wrestling. Now, originally the plan was for Ric Flair to drop the WCW Championship to Lex Luger at the Great American Bash 1991. And then they switched it to where he would drop it to Barry Windham. However, ultimately, Jim Herd and WCW had changed their mind and they were going to have him do it at a house show. And Ric Flair flat out refused to do so because at the time, Ric Flair had paid a down payment on the World Heavyweight Championship. You know, the big gold. But Jim Herd flat out refused to pay Ric Flair back the money that was owed to him, and thus he took the big gold boat with him to the World Wrestling Federation. And well, the rest, they say, is history. Now, ultimately, at the Great American Bash 1991 in Baltimore, Lex Luger would face Barry Windham in a steel cage match to determine the new WCW World Champion. And Lex Luger would win his first WCW Championship. But however, if you go back and you watch this pay-per-view, the fans, especially during this match, are just chanting, "We want Flair, we want Flair." Because they want the Nature Boy there, because he was the World Heavyweight Champion. Let's call a spade a spade. I'll never forget that moment as a kid when Ric Flair showed up on WWF television with the WCW title. Man, you know, everybody always talks about the NWO and stuff showing up. Like, this to me was like the first real, like, mind-boggling, like, holy crap, like, I can't believe he's here type of moment. And that is your top story of the week here on Back in the Day. Now, here on Back in the Day, we always like to take a look back at some of the great matches throughout the history of World Championship Wrestling. And I got a fun one for you today. So this week we're going back to 1993. We're going to take a look at the matchup between Cactus Jack and Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff at Super Brawl 3, which was a Falls Count Anywhere matchup. Now, I really truly believe when Paul Orndorff came into World Championship Wrestling in 1992 to 1993, it really reinvigorated his career. And I thought he had a terrific run there. And one of the rivalries he would have, believe it or not, was with one Cactus Jack. And hey, Paul Orndorff was just a bad mamma jamma. He's a tough dude. But hey, we all know the resume of Cactus Jack. He could withstand insurmountable amounts of pain, and thus it made it for one heck of a matchup. And of course, as with any Cactus Jack match, you knew they would be brawling all throughout the arena, and that's exactly what they did. It was just fun and interesting to see Paul Orndorff in this environment too, because obviously this was something he didn't typically do. And there's some pretty stiff shots in this matchup as well. And hey, Paul Orndorff, it's not like he was going to let up. I mean, he was stiff to begin with, and Cactus Jack could take it though. And I'll never forget the finish of this is like when Paul Orndorff is like signaling for the pile driver and the crowd's like getting all into it. He's doing this and whatnot. And then of course he turns right around and Cactus Jack meets him with a damn shovel to the head, knocks him out, and wins the matchup. It's a fun little matchup. It's not a technical masterpiece by any means. But still, it's a pretty cool matchup, and a matchup that I think you should definitely check out. And that's why it's your matchup of the week here on Back in the Day. Now, here on Back in the Day, we always like to highlight some of the great rivalries all throughout the history of World Championship Wrestling. And this week, we're going to highlight a rivalry that, in my opinion, does not get nearly enough love. We're going to go back to the year 1998 and take a look at the rivalry between one Diamond Dallas Page and Raven. Now, Raven had came into World Championship Wrestling from ECW in 1997 and had this mysterious aura about himself, and he would end up, like always, was at ringside, and you would see more and more wrestlers would kind of join him and thus be a part of Raven's flock. Well, you really didn't truly know what the intentions of Raven was for months, really. And I mean, he would just kind of randomly just mess with different top baby faces throughout the company, or mid-card baby faces at best. But then entered United States Champion at the time, Diamond Dallas Page. And thus, the rivalry was born because Raven wanted that gold that was strapped around the waist of DDP. And we've said it here before and we'll say it again, what makes a great rivalry really is just the in-ring chemistry. And for whatever reason, DDP and Raven had just that. And that's what made this rivalry all so great. At the time, DDP was involved with Chris Benoit in what was a very technical and great rivalry for the United States Championship. Ultimately, they would meet at WCW Uncensored 1998 in a triple threat match where pretty much no DQ, or Raven's rules as they like to call it. And the brawling in this matchup is just awesome. And you put a guy like Chris Benoit in there with these guys, oh man. But the rivalry would continue on throughout the next couple of months. To me, what always stuck out the most, I'll never forget it, the TRL incident. That's right, because believe it or not, WCW would have a deal with MTV where they would have a couple different specials and have wrestlers come on their shows. And of course, back in the 90s, TRL, or Total Request Live, was by far the hottest show on MTV. Like, a who's who was involved on it. And on one edition of TRL, DDP would be on there, and they would be asking him some questions about his rivalry with Raven. And then Raven would actually interrupt on a television monitor, going back and forth with DDP. Now, what would be the shocking moment of this, though, is Raven would come out on the set and attack DDP with a stop sign, and thus would deliver an even flow to him, knocking DDP out and making him incapacitated. And like I say, Raven would be in DDP's business all throughout this time. Now, they would meet at Spring Stampede, once again, one-on-one this time, in a Raven's Rules matchup for the United States Heavyweight Championship. And of course, remember, Raven had his flock on hand, and of shenanigans would ensue, and ultimately Raven would defeat DDP and end his United States Championship title run. Now, of course, interestingly enough, I think literally the night later, Raven would drop the belt to Goldberg, and Goldberg, at the height of his undefeated streak. But the rivalry would still continue on with DDP and Raven, and it would conclude at Slamboree of 1998, where they would meet in a Bowery steel cage match, which is pretty much just a weapons-filled cage match with a ceiling on top. And the point of this matchup really was to keep all the members of the flock out from interfering in the matchup. And that kind of worked for the most part. Now, ultimately, DDP would end up winning this matchup. And at the end of the matchup, it was a really big moment because Mortis, a.k.a. Chris Kanyon, would take his mask off and reveal himself to the world, because at the time he was also involved with a feud with Raven as well. But just watch the matchups between these guys in the ring. I mean, it was awesome, man. They did try to recreate the rivalry several years later in TNA Wrestling, and it just wasn't the same. But in 1998... this rivalry was freaking awesome, man. The matchups these guys had, you gotta check them out. That's why it's our rivalry of the week here on Back in the Day. Now, if you follow me on social media, you know I'm a big collector. And you know I love collecting me some wrestling magazines. So, here on Back in the Day, I always like to take a look back at some of these magazines. And for this week, we're going to take a look at WCW Magazine from February of 1993. Let's check it out. And here you see it's a big preview of Starrcade 1992 in this issue, as well as, 10 questions for Tony Atlas, an interview with Rick Rude, and some coverage from Halloween Havoc 1992, and look at that, we got a giant two-sided Sting poster inside. And can WCW's Young Lions shape the future of the sport? Let's check it out. Oh, look at Cactus. Beware. You need to sign back up. Save 30% for WCW Magazine. Late breaking news. And it talks about the King of Cable tournament, which went on throughout the end of 1992. And there's a young Eric Walks talking to Dustin Rhodes, the Natural. And I always thought this was a unique team. Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas, who would hold the WCW Tag Team titles at this time frame. And then Have You Heard section. Look at this picture. Ron Simmons and Steve Austin at an arm wrestling contest. I feel like this should be taking place at like Tim White's bar or something. There should be like a bunch of beer involved. Damn! The Who Am I section. We always love this. I'm a second generation wrestler. In fact, my father trained me for 2 years before I turned pro in 1998. First pay-per-view was Wrestle War 91. He's a former World Tag Team Champion. Father came out of retirement in 1992 to team with him in Japan. Ooh, who could it be? I think I know who it is. What? Adam Bomb? What is this? Oh, we're not talking about the wrestler from the WWF. But interesting nonetheless for the headline. Because look, that's Adam Bomb they're talking about. This kid had it figured out. You think the WWF was like reading this and they're like, you know what, we're going to steal this kid's gimmick. And hear me out. Oh, this is pretty cool with Lance Russell. Lance Russell, one of the all-time great analysts, announcers. And he did work in WCW at this time frame, believe it or not. But man, oh man, Lance Russell was a national treasure. Oh, 10 questions with Tony Atlas. Thank God he's not Saba Simba in this one. That picture just screams that he is looking at feet pics. I'm sorry. Oh, Bill Watts speaks out. Oh, we're feeling, look at the business behind the brawling. This should be fun. Oh, look at these baby faces. Marcus Bagwell and Shane Douglas. Johnny Gunn. Vaguely remember him. I was just talking about the rules, or Bill Watts' rules in WCW, which were pretty silly, honestly. You couldn't throw anybody over the top rope, which that was forever. You couldn't jump off the top rope, or you got disqualified. Come on, man. See? Look at here. Rick Rude getting ready to jump on his opponent, but if you do it, you get DQ'd. Poor Tony. Is that like the best gear he could get? Oh, and here we go. We got our Sting poster. Man to call Sting. Oh, look at that beautiful, beautiful Stinger. Oh, and here we go. Exclusive preview of WCW Starrcade 1992. So this was an interesting pay-per-view because it was a mixture of one-on-one tag matches, as well as the Battle Bowl and Battle Royale, as well as the Lethal Lottery Tournament and Battle Bowl. Remember, Sting was the defending Battle Bowl champion. I always thought this was cool too. Like, you could actually fill out like the results in the book here as well. So it tells you like the lethal, or it shows like some spaces for Lethal Lottery matchups and the Battle Bowl. Boys to Men. Oh, sorry, wrong Boys to Men. Can WCW's Young Lions shape the future of the sport? Let's take a look at some of the Young Lions they're talking about here. Oh, we got Eric Watts. Oh God, Van Hammer. And Johnny Gunn. It's not looking good, folks. Oh, now we're cooking with gas, though. Stunning Steve Austin. And, of course, the natural Dustin Rhodes. And there you see Shane Douglas. And what the hell's going on here? Alright, and match-by-match coverage of WCW Halloween Havoc 1992. Let's take a look at some of the results here. Here you have Michael Hayes, who's involved in a 6-man tag team matchup, involving the Seaman as well, with Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton, just to name a few. Incredible one-on-one matchup between Ricky Steamboat and Flying Brian Pillman occurred on this show as well. And how about Big Fan Fader going up against Nikita Koloff? Now, interestingly enough, Fader would be defending the United States Championship for Rick Rude, because Rick Rude would have a NWA Championship match later on in the show. And this is an incredible matchup, a hidden gem. I've talked about it before. If you follow me on TikTok, talking about the tag team title match between Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham against Steve Austin and Steve Williams. Now, Steve Williams' partner at the time, Terry Bam Bam Gordy, was injured, so Stunning Steve would take his place, but this is an incredible encounter. Also, you have the WCW World Heavyweight Championship clash between Ron Simmons defending against the Barbarian. This confrontation between Paul Heyman and Medusa, which finally boiled over here at Halloween Havoc. And then the NWA Championship matchup with your defending champion, Masahiro Chono, going up against Ravishing Rick Rude. And in your main event, it was Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal with Jake the Snake and Sting, and it would be a coal miner's glove matchup. Third Degree with Rick Rude. Now, tell me, What do we think of Rick Rude here without the mustache? Because he went through a brief period in time here where he didn't have the mustache. I feel like the mustache is iconic. I feel like we really need it back on your Ravishing Rick. Out and about. Ooh, the Ultimate Wrestling Music Album. Yeah, Cactus Jack. Oh, man. Sing it, baby, Mr. Bang Bang. And Dustin Rhodes. What the hell is he going to be singing? Our parting shot sees Ravishing Rick Rude high in the air, hoisted up there by one Kensuke Sasaki from New Japan Pro Wrestling. And the choice is yours. We need the poster book. I need it. And of course, Starrcade 92 Battle Bowl, an advertisement for the upcoming pay-per-view. So WCW Magazine from February 1993 is our magazine of the week here on Back in the Day. Now here on Back in the Day, we always like to highlight some of the amazing merch throughout the years of World Championship Wrestling. So for this week, I want to take a look at the WCW NWO Fly Buddies? What in God's name are these little abominations? Well, let me tell you, friends. WCW Fly Buddies was essentially where you fill up a balloon with water or, like, air or whatever the hell you want to. And you pretty much, like, fill it up and then you throw it and watch them fly to your buddy? I don't know. This damn thing looks like an abomination. I mean, jeez. Can you imagine, like, getting this in, like, your Christmas stocking that year? It's the thing of nightmares, for crying out loud. So there's 3 different ones they had. Hollywood Hogan, the Giant, and Sting. I mean, look at the Giant's cute little boots, and they're all laced up and stuff, and then it's just his head. It's like it kind of looks like the cross between, like, the Noid and, like, and Spot, you know, from 7-Up. I don't know, man. Some weird stuff. I honestly can say I did not ever own these. I don't remember seeing them, but man, oh man, looking back on them, they like creep the hell out of me. And that's our merch of the week here on Back in the Day. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode here on Back in the Day. And as always, if you love the content here on World Championship Wreckage, show your support. Hit that like and subscribe button because they put some amazing content out weekly. Now, if you like this type of content, why don't you head on over to our YouTube channel, Cole TV, where we have some amazing content out weekly as well. We have 2 shows on professional wrestling each week. Pro Wrestling 60 airs every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we recap everything that happened in the world of professional wrestling in 60 minutes or less. Also, we have our show Learning the Ropes. So, why don't you head on over to Cole TV and join the revolution? Well, once again, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week on another episode of Back in the Day.